fell one time, then I fell again. I fell a third time, can't get away from the sin. I keep falling, then I come back to you, crawling, asking forgive me now, I'm ballin', knowing that I let you down, appalling. I don't wanna jeopardize my calling. When I hear your voice no more, I'm halting. I just wanna live in the world you're revolving. I am so imperfect, I'm getting involved in these flesh-tied friends, the blind consulting, pulling me away from the world and revolting. Asking for forgiveness is probably insulting, but you keep taking me back and you're vaulting. Give me chances. You keep giving me chances. You give me chances. You just keep giving me chances. King. Royalty, stand up, brand up, fam up, hand out, no way, hands up, know what, name that, it's mine, claim that, it's time, message, we shine, above all, the decline, the darkness cannot last, the shadow of my past, before I gain knowledge of heritage, I have the bloodline that I share, most powerful out here, the mover of mountains is who I am touting, the richest among us is who I'm the son of, from sundown to sun up, that's how I the come up, position is just mine, the favor in due time, can't have it, man, you lying, the powerless, you trying, enemy beneath me, there's nothing to teach me, the people receive me, cause my God complete me, and my God does keep me, and my God they free me, and my God redeem me, and my God relieve me, I'm king in the million, crown me, I am winning my position, God's giving, God's in it, God's surely king. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. As usual, every week, we are coming to you and having conversations with different people around the entire world. It is really super cool how it has worked out over the last couple of years with you guys. And, you know, this week is something different, I think, different than I've had a lot of guests, but different guests than I've ever had, I think, and the philosophy that this guy has about connecting Christianity with creativity. But I don't want to tell you too much. I'm going to bring him on right now. His name is Jake Doberenz. What's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going? Nice
Man, I am doing great. How are you?
Doing fine. Doing great.
You know, our conversation off camera was really interesting, and I almost got lost in it before when I was like, oh wait, we're not on yet. So I wanted to definitely talk to you a little bit about about what you do and how what you do is advantageous to Christianity. However, before I do that, I want you to tell me about you. I like to create context for the people that are watching. I want people to know who exactly is talking, and I want you to do it I want you to do it from your point of view. Who are you? Where are you from? How did you grow up? Who is your mama and them?
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah. Who am I? Great question. I was born and raised in Oregon. To a Christian family kind of thing where, we just been kind of, anytime the church doors were open, we were there. So that's a big part of my life. But a major kind of change was when my dad started working for a Christian bookstore and then found himself running this Christian bookstore. So, we talk about PKs, preacher's kid, pastor's kid sometimes. Well, there's a little known group of CBKs, Christian bookstore kids, which somehow equally as formative, because suddenly you're around all this material and you have free access to books, and that was a major change in my life. Having access to all this information and I'm like in third grade at this time, and so I'm just consuming content, becoming really passionate about these ideas. Just got on fire for God because all these books were showing the evidence for my faith and encouraging me, and so I was the preacher kid even in public school, really passionate about that. That was a big part of my identity.
Mm.
Now sometimes growing up it was a little bit, people would know me for what I was against more than
Mm.
what I was for, and so that became something I had to wrestle with over time. Yeah, during this time, I loved Jesus. I was on fire for God, and I knew I wanted to do something in my life that had to do with that. And I bounced around some ideas. For a while, I was going to be like a biologist. I was like, we need good Christian scientists. But then turns out, biology is more than like Punnett squares, and there's like a lot of advanced stuff. And I don't really do like blood and things like that, so that wasn't going to work. I thought about like being a Christian lawyer or something like that, and and again, it's like, whew, that's a lot of work that I just am not that passionate about.
Right.
So, so finally, I settled on being a Bible major in college. I thought, you know what? If I can just have a solid biblical and theological foundation,
Sure.
then I can train other people to be, the Christian biologist, the Christian
Right.
lawyer, the Christian etc.
Sure.
Because I can't do all of that at once, unfortunately. So yeah, that's what I did in college. I majored in Bible, and then I got a master's degree in theological studies. And for a while, I was kind of on this path to become a Bible professor. I thought that's what I wanted to do. I always liked teaching, communicating, so I thought that's what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then it wasn't really a moment. It was just a realization over time that Bible teaching was, again, one of those things where I liked the idea of it, but there was a lot of pieces of it that I wasn't as thrilled with.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also just the fact of the market. Like, there are not a lot of positions open for teaching Bible at universities, and
Sure.
that's just, it would be a very hard career that would take years and years and years of study to maybe get a job in.
Right.
So I had this kind of awakening, and I was talking with my brother, who, my brother and I are really close, and he is really creative. He's in school right now for filmmaking, and so he's always kind of was on that creative path. He was
Sure.
always going to be a filmmaker. Unlike me, I changed my mind 400 million times. But I was talking with him, and I just kind of realized that there's this creative part of me that had been a part of me for a long time. I remember back in fifth grade, I wrote my first short story, and it was like 5 paragraphs of absolute garbage. But I remember that feeling. I remember that feeling when I wrote it, and I loved it. And it was a parody of coming into fifth grade for the first time. Just highly sarcastic and humorous. And I love this story, even though I found it years later, and I was like, this is terrible. I didn't spell anything right, and terrible story structure, and it's only like 5 paragraphs, but I was ready to turn it into a book. So anyway, in the middle of my master's degree, I'm starting to think about all these things and realizing that I've kind of ignored this creative side of me.
Yeah.
And maybe a part of it was I didn't really think that was like a real career or like something really useful to be a writer. Even though I kind of already I created stories, and there's a part of me that's like, yeah, it'd be kind of fun to be a Bible professor and then publish these stories on the side, kind of thing. But then I decided, you know what? I'm going to marry my 2 favorite things: theology, biblical studies, the kind of advanced things I was learning in my education,
Sure.
with my creative storytelling side and my interest in humor. So I combined those, and voila, my company, Theophany Media, was born. And that's what we're trying to do. Creatively communicate Christ. Be at that intersection of good, solid theology and good, solid storytelling. Because I don't want to compromise on either of those fronts.
Right. You mentioned something that I find, actually you mentioned a couple things that I find really interesting, and I want to sort of expand on that. You said you were beginning to be known for what you were against. What do you mean by that? Give me an example of what that means, and why that is not good.
Yeah. So without diving into too much controversy, I was very set on I had the right religious views, I had the right political views. I was really into apologetics, and while I do think there's a place for apologetics in the church, a lot of apologetics is kind of it lacks empathy. It takes really hard stances and says, if you're not on this side of the truth, you're probably like stupid. Like there's something wrong with you if you don't understand we have the truth. So on issues of like creation, evolution, and politics, I took some hard stances. Being against the scientific theory of evolution, and any politician that wasn't a staunch Bible believing Republican, I was a little suspicious of, and so I became known for being against evolution, to the point where like somebody would call me the evolution guy. And I was like, that's not the branding that I want.
Right.
If I'm going to be the something guy, I want to be the Christian guy or the Bible guy or something like that. I don't want to be known for what I'm against. And so, yeah, that was a challenge, especially in high school. Again, I was this fired up kid, a kid who thinks I know everything.
Sure.
And on some of these things, I did know more than my peers, because I had read a lot. But that doesn't actually mean I know everything. And it was a learning process to have to kind of undo that, because it hurts your witness when you're just the anti everything kind of guy, and you're forgetting that actually what changes people is love, is these fruits of the Spirit that come out of us. That's what really gets people to Christianity, not arguing them,
not position
into faith. Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. We can walk around thinking we know everything, which is very which you and I have in common. But one thing I've learned is that the creator of the universe created me before, and he knew me before I knew myself. Therefore, there's no possible way that I could know everything. And thinking that I know everything is thinking that I somehow can level with the creator of the universe. I always have things that I can learn. That is me in my adult life. But in my kid life, we sound like twins.
There you go. Yeah.
Tell me about, when you speak of creativity, which is another thing that you and I have in common, when you think of creativity and meshing it with Christianity or teaching Bible or teaching the theology as you know it, what does that look like? And just in when one is to say we're mixing creativity and Christianity, what does that look like? Because creativity is really a big word. I guess they're both big words, but creativity is really like all encompassing, and creativity is so, it's so different interpretations of what is and what isn't creative. So what do you mean when you say you're mixing creativity and Christianity?
Yeah, you're right. Creativity is a big word, and everybody kind of means something different. I tend to use it as sort of a word to mean an kind of an something that's interesting, something that maybe had a little bit of entertainment in there. It's the opposite of and here's another big word, didactic, something like very instructional. Like if I am reading the instruction manual for this table I picked up from IKEA,
Sure.
it's very to the point, and that's all it is. It's not fun, it's not interesting, it's the instructions. There you go. So creativity is kind of something that's a little bit more fun, interesting, a little bit of entertainment. It involves the arts, music and writing, and you know, dance and performing. All of those are kinds of creativity, and it's the kind of thing where it's hard to really define it, but most people can kind of understand what's creative versus not creative. And some people make the case like you can do accounting creatively, or something like that. Although my wife's an accountant, and she would say that's called cooking the books, which is illegal to do creative accounting. So I don't know, but but yeah, there are ways to do whatever you're doing creatively. Certainly, I think human brains are kind of wired to be interested in stories and songs, and those sort of creative expressions stick with us more. You know, the some of the biggest cultural events are entertainment. They're
Right.
movies that we watch and we discuss and dissect, and that's a communal experience for so much of us. It's entertainment is such an important part of our culture. So I'm trying to say, okay, well, I think we need Christian influence in this, and there's a couple different approaches. There's the
Sure.
let me make a Christian version of Hollywood, our Pure Flicks and our Kendrick's brothers, and we could do that, make our own movies, or alternatively, you take kind of the existing structures, the existing Hollywood, and Christians kind of go into that and try to influence it in any way they can. Um, and I think there are merits to both of those approaches, and I'm fine with both of those approaches. I used to think that if you weren't making a Christian, insert art form, you were a bad Christian. Like if you were a Christian making, secular music, that was terrible. Or, if you were writing a story that didn't bring somebody closer to Jesus directly and explicitly, what's wrong with you? I no longer hold those lines, because I think there are some really good ways to kind of, I don't know what the word is, like kind of stealthily inject Jesus into something. I mentioned my brother being a filmmaker or studying to be a filmmaker. He doesn't have plans to, make Christian films per se that would appeal to a Christian audience. But there are certainly ways in which his faith is going to come out in those creations, and in the choices people make, in sometimes just the fact that somebody's a Christian and that just influences how they make choices. The movie isn't about Christianity, but just happens to have a character that's like that. There are all sorts of ways to kind of combine Christ and creativity. And my role is to try to kind of facilitate those conversations, help us think about it intentionally, and ultimately, this is my company's called Theophany Media, because theophany is this theology word that means when God shows up in the story. And so I'm trying to sort of orchestrate God showing up in these stories. In the Bible, God can show up as a burning bush, which is wild. Maybe it's a couple dudes visiting Abraham. Like there are all these ways that God shows up. And
Right.
so I want to help people think about theophanies in their creative work. That's my role.
I think another thing. I think another way of understanding it, because once again we have that in common, that prior, as a younger man, I thought that doing Christian from Christian music, but doing Christian everything. I was more so of if you can't tell it's Christian, then it ain't Christian. If you don't hear Jesus in this music, it ain't Christian.
Right.
Sort of mentality. And what I realized is, like, once I've submitted myself and understood that I didn't know everything and that I wasn't leaving space for the Lord to actually show me anything. Once I humbled myself a little bit, I realized that one of our biggest jobs is to lead people to Christ, which doesn't mean that we always have to preach them to Christ. Sometimes we just walk the direction and lead them by just walking the direction of Christ. And on the path to get there, there are a lot of just the journey there. There are a lot of stories and a lot of things and a lot of stops we have to make and that type of thing while you're on the journey to get there. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we preach Jesus the entire time. That means that though I walk this path, I walk it for a purpose. You walk this path with me. We may trip up on rocks. We may have to, go hunting. We may have to go fishing. We may have to, on this path to Christ. But so I can tell stories about all of these things. But we were on this path, and I was leading you down this direction. And so, I get you, because that is a lot of I think, and I get you in the way, I think we grew up very similar, right? Although on the other side of the country, you said every time the church doors were open, your family was there, right? My family was the same way. Every time the church doors were open, my family was there. And we were, and we were involved in, my mother's in the choir and my dad's a deacon and, children's ministry and like every single time the church opened, we were there, Bible study and, whatever. We were always there. And so coming from that particular background and wanting to stay, because some people come from that background and rebel against it, but I wasn't one of those people. So coming from that background, we want to stay in that background. So we take on the idea that if it's not Christian, it's wrong, or if it's not Christian or isn't relatable, it's sort of wrong. But I think that we have to sort of understand that, we have to lead people to Christ. We have to be an example for people in what we do. It's sometimes, like you said, sometimes, you're a lawyer, right? In that, can you lead people to Christ? And, but you have to be a lawyer, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like your wife is an accountant. I mean, she has to count money at one point or another, and ain't really talking Jesus in there. We're doing numbers on a spreadsheet here, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So yeah, I want to now that I'm off of my soapbox, I want to. What are some of the things what are some of the creative works that you do or in the process of doing or have done? I've read on your website a couple of things, but I want to, what are some of the creative works that you're currently in or have done, or give me some ideas of what is it that you guys do?
Yeah. I just like to dabble in everything. I mean, I have on my website, I have kind of a writer's bucket list where I made a list of every kind of writing, from poetry to, books and things, any kind of medium for writing. I wrote that down, and my goal is to check all of those off and have something published in every space.
Right.
So I love creativity in all its form. I even started dabbling in art recently, kind of experimenting with watercolors and paper and different things like that. So I like everything. And I try to experiment with that. I have some published plays. Right now, podcasts is a main focus of mine. There's a lot of Christian podcasts. I mean, there's it's small in the
Sure.
grand scheme of things, but there are a lot of Christian podcasts. But I'm trying to. I've kind of invented almost a genre of kind of a Christian storytelling podcast. There's several in kind of the wider world, but in Christian storytelling, um, there isn't really. So I have a podcast called The Bible But Funnier. As of the recording of this, we're on a break right now, but we'll get back here soon. And that's just a humorous retelling of Bible stories.
Sure.
It's one of the create.
If you can get humor out of some Bible stories, good.
Some of them are obvious. Oh yeah, some of them are really obvious. Some of them I have to kind of stretch a little bit or kind of add some jokes in there to kind of make
Yeah, I
it
know.
funny. But
I'm on this quest right now to sort of again read the Bible in its entirety, but I'm trying to stay on the stories that happen versus trying to read for there's several ways you could read the Bible for different reasons. So, but right now I'm trying to read it through just to understand the story from top to end, right?
Sure.
And it's like it is the wildest dramatic story that it is just interesting and dramatic, the Bible. But so I was like, he's trying to make it funny. It's just like, man, it's so much, happening.
Yeah, you're right that the Bible, it's interesting, it's weird at times, but sometimes Christians kind of grow up with those Sunday school versions of stories,
Lord, yes, I'm one.
and then they don't realize the depth, the true meaning, the intricacies. So one of the things I'm trying to do on my podcast is use humor to bring to life what's just there that people kind of miss. So that's sort of what humor is doing.
Yeah. That's super interesting. Yeah, I am definitely one of those Christians that grew up on the Bible story, the Moses and the Bible stories and that type of thing, and the Hanna-Barberas. And interestingly enough, when I read that same story during my quest of reading the entire Bible, now when I go back and read the same story, because I know this story, right? But one of the things that struck me is that there's a small part of a story that you don't know, and it's like Moses and delivering the Israelites from Egypt, and it's everyone knows that one of the plagues was the Lord killed the firstborn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I didn't know was Lord killed the firstborn that didn't have the blood, but he also killed the firstborn of the cattle. And I was like, dang, yo, he killed the cattle too.
Got 'em all.
Like, it's just like that little detail. I hadn't really, but I knew the Bible story because I've studied the story a gazillion times growing up. As I grew up, everybody knows the story, but sometimes it's going back and that little piece of it when you read it again, it's like, oh man, the cattle had the firstborn too. Like the poor cows, man, it sucks. I totally get you. Okay. All right. I've got one more thing before, we've got to wrap up because my time here is interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a question that I ask everyone that comes on the Elevation podcast, and you shall be asked the same question. All right, so I always ask everyone this: if God gave you the grace to change one thing about the world, interpret that however you want, whether it's about the world or about humanity, about people. I don't know. If there's one thing that you could change about the world, what would it be?
Whew. All right. Well, yeah. The first thing that came to my mind, so I'll go with that one, is listening. I wish we were better listeners. Christians, everybody needs to listen better and to understand what good listening looks like. It's not just hearing so I can make the rebuttal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I thought was kind of the case growing up. I need to know what other people say so I can refute it,
Right.
so I can take it down. But that's not listening. Listening is a posture of
Mm-hmm.
respect, understanding, sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
We should listen even to our enemies, even to
Mm-hmm.
people we just think are crazy that they believe X, Y, Z. We should listen. And I've often said that along listening, because listening can be easy for people we like, but it's especially
Yeah.
something we need to develop for people we don't like.
Right.
And a part of loving our enemies, I think, is listening to them, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Just because they're our enemy doesn't mean they're completely irrational and they decide to pick that position, out of a hat just because. There's some kind of process why they came to that. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really important.
Yeah.
In the kind of new vision of apologetics I want to promote, which I think creativity and art has a big part to play in,
Sure.
is this culture of listening and exploring together,
Mm-hmm.
collaboration with the world, rather than we are right, you are wrong. It's a different kind of posture. And so I guess that's how I'd probably change the world. If we all just listened and nodded along, it'd be a little better.
Yeah. I
So I
think.
guess the solution is everybody should be on podcasts more often. What a great time to get to listen, to talk to people and listen, interact with, different people. I mean, that's what Elevation Podcast is trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just hear out these people from different walks of life.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
think. I
great.
think one of the things that I hear you say, especially when you talk about apologetics and you talk about the theology. I think I hear you say something that I've heard other like theologians or Bible scholars like N.T. Wright talk about when how the merger of creativity and Christianity could lead could help in the culture around the world. I think obviously someone like N.T. Wright is not getting into doing anything creative. He's just saying
Fortunately, yeah.
he's just saying theoretically, it's theoretically it could work. So I think that's I think that's what you have in common with a lot of other advanced biblical thinkers just around the world. Before we roll out, let me ask you: do you is I've got your website there on the screen. What other ways can people get in contact with you other than just simply your website, or is there another website or social media? Or 'cause I think
Sure,
there's a
sure.
lot of people that'll be interested in getting in contact with you.
Yeah. So yeah, my website, jakedoberenz.com. And then I'm found on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Jake Doberenz. I think on Facebook it's Jake A. Doberenz, but And then my company, Theophany Media, is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Theophany Media, and at theophanymedia.com. So most of when I talk about um, creative stuff, it's generally more on Theophany Media. So if your interest
Mm-hmm.
is more into that, go there. If you want more like cultural analysis from a Christian perspective and to see some of my creative works, links to my published plays or podcasts or books and things. I have a book coming out this month in April, so that's
Sweet.
a kind of exciting. All that's on Jake Doberenz. So creative stuff, go to theophanymedia.com. Everything else I do, go to jakedoberenz.com. But if you go to either one, you'll probably find your way to the other. So that's what I'd urge people to do.
Sounds great. Listen, Jake, I appreciate you coming on today. Think the conversations that we have are really, really useful, really helpful to people that are searching through that in the culture. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Love being on. It's great to talk with a fellow creative.
That's awesome. And this has been the Elevation Podcast. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. I appreciate you all for hanging out with me. I'm gonna go and try to get this shot. Oh Lord, I'm going to get this this COVID shot. Y'all pray for me. All right, y'all. Peace out.